Given the unprecedented millions of Biden illegal aliens who are invading our country, it is only common sense that when I'm reelected, we will begin, and we have no choice, the largest deportation operation in American history. We have no choice.
As you can see, guys, the Trump administration is going to bring a lot of changes with it, and right now what it feels like to me is that the Biden administration has not delivered what it promised, and hence you may actually see a change in presidency this year. And if that happens, of course, we all know Trump is going to be the next US president all over again. He has some massive changes, and especially immigration is a big department, and big promises are being made for the immigration department. तो काफ़ी changes आने वाले हैं यहाँ पर, और ये changes हम लोग explain करेंगे इस वीडियो में. अच्छा, देखते हैं कि पहले तो लास्ट टाइम कौन से चेंजेस हुए थे. चेंजेस तो बहुत हुए थे, बहुत सारे पेटिशंस आए थे, बहुत सारे एग्जीक्यूटिव ऑर्डर्स आए थे, बट वी आर गोना बी टॉकिंग अबाउट द major changes in terms of an immigration standpoint. I know most of you guys who are watching are either students or working professionals or families in the US, and hence my focus is on you. So guys, let's talk about the last time's changes, because I believe Trump is going to be working from there. Essentially, whatever was done, he's going to pick up from there itself, and whatever the Biden administration has undoed, he's going to basically redo it and basically move forward from there, right? So assuming that, it's important to understand the last time's changes. The first and the biggest change that I want to point out here is the increased minimum wages for H-1B workers. Internationals who basically want to work in the US, they want you to basically work on higher salaries. Sometimes even higher salaries than Americans themselves. Now you might ask, isn't that great for us? The answer is yes, it may be great. But at the end of the day, let's say if you are someone with less experience or you're a fresher, in that case, of course, you cannot deserve to bag that salary in many cases. And what that means is immigration and basically getting a job in the US, getting an H-1B might turn out to be quite difficult in many cases if basically, again, these kinds of changes keep on happening. It was a pro for some people, their salaries got raised and this happened, that happened. But now at the end of the day, what Trump wants is that if an employer wants to hire internationals on an H-1B, they should be able to justify to the government that they are really needed. And it's not just that, like earlier, basically, they would just hire internationals at a cheaper price, so they are cheaper employees, essentially easier to get at a cheaper cost to the company, and that's how they would move forward earlier. But now he wants that cut down, and essentially that's one thing to be wary of. He might actually crack down further on that.
After consulting with our top government health professionals, I have decided to take several strong but necessary actions to protect the health and well-being of all Americans. To keep new cases from entering our shores, we will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days.
Another thing that happened back during the time of COVID, when Trump administration was in power, were the COVID travel bans. Now, the COVID travel bans were somehow imposed by almost every country, right? There were limitations essentially. However, Trump administration, I feel that they sort of used it to push forward their agenda of sort of almost banning people from coming into the country. And to me personally, I would say it's not something that I understand. It's for safety, right? But at the end of the day, there were people who were stuck outside with their families, people who wanted basically to come back to the US and just had to go to renew their H-1B. They could not do that. All kinds of people suffered. And these travel bans, I feel, were not just a result of COVID, but also Trump pushing the idea that we don't really want immigrants in the country, so let's just put a halt to it altogether. The third, again, important thing was suspension of routine visa services. If you remember, back in 2020, what was happening was, and we've been here long enough, I was there, I remember visa appointments were extremely difficult to get, even more than today. And today you would think that, okay, it's difficult. Trust me, it was even worse back then. Even the people who were basically on an H-1B, just to renew it, it was difficult for them to get an appointment. Now, of course, H-1Bs get it relatively easier. Students and business and tourism, all these people have still a little bit of a problem. But at the end of the day, back then, everyone had a problem. On top of that, there were times wherein Trump completely suspended routine visa services, whether it was through COVID that he used up basically the idea of COVID to do that. Whatever he did, essentially, he was basically planning on stopping immigration as much as possible. And even if someone wanted to temporarily enter the country, it may not be the safest thing to let everyone enter. You can apply sanctions, but he completely stopped it for some time as well. As I mentioned in my previous point, visa appointments were severely limited. They were not available even for H1Bs. Sometimes we had to monitor, and that was the only time where we were monitoring for H1Bs also, and basically getting them slots even on a basically 2 months later, and they were very happy with it. Essentially because people were just not getting them at the end of the day. Right now, if you see, you get it in the next week also sometimes, but things were very different back then. There were other things that Trump did, and these also are related to immigration, but they do not relate to us very much. For instance, the U.S.-Mexico border wall that he was building. Now, this border was never completed essentially, but at the end of the day, they did do quite a lot of it, and it's not something that affects us directly, as we are not going illegally into the country, but it shows the ideas of the person. He wants to make the country more secure, and he's not wrong in his place at the end of the day. I hope you would understand. You probably would do similar things if you wanted to crack down on illegal immigration, right? But these are just things that he brought in his last term, and these were some of the biggest changes. There are many, many more, trust me. Now, based on these previous things that were going on essentially, here are the expectations that I have for this time.
Following the Eisenhower model, we will use all necessary state, local, federal, and military resources to carry out the largest domestic deportation operation in American history. Got it there.
So as you see here, number one thing is mass deportation of illegal aliens or immigrants essentially. And Trump goes as far as to call them Biden illegal aliens. But anyway, the important part over here is that we understand that anyone who has entered the country illegally, or even is suspected to enter the country illegally, they don't have the proper documentation. Trump would not have the level of sympathy that the Biden administration has had till now, and they would basically push these people out of the country. So right now, if you see what's happening basically under the Biden administration, illegal immigration has gotten easier than legal immigration. So it's almost as if we people are stupid, and we are going through the whole process basically, studying first, taking these GRE, GMAT, IELTS, TOEFL tests, and then we go forward with our study overseas. Then we study over there, we invest lakhs of rupees over there. After spending 50-60 lakhs, we are basically going and getting our jobs over there, and then we are basically somehow getting stabilized from there, getting our return on investment. But illegal immigrants, they just go into the country, and apparently the Biden administration has welcomed them with open arms. Now, I wouldn't say they have done it so well. Essentially, it's a phrase, but at the end of the day, if you understand, there are pathways right now for illegal immigrants to remain in the US, to stay in the US. There are pathways to get identification cards. All these pathways, which it's difficult for us as legal migrants to get them. So it's important to understand that one administration, just Trump to Biden and then Biden to Trump, major effects will be there on this one. The second thing is a total reform of the immigration system. I strongly believe this may be in order. Trump was about to work on this. However, the administration did not have enough time, I believe, to be able to produce this. Take a look at this image. This is what was going on in 2017, and this is what the Trump administration had proposed. So family-based immigration is reduced in their proposal. Economic-based immigration is increased, of course, going forward as a Republican. Humanitarian claims are there still, but again are reduced. And the diversity visas, I think they almost plan on ending it. But the major system that the Trump-based administration is sort of referring to right here is the points-based system. In fact, many times they've mentioned that Australia, Canada, these countries are doing it the right way, and they're going to be giving you points on the basis of your youth, your having of a valuable skill, if you have an offer of employment or not, whether you're planning on creating any jobs or not, and finally, if you're earning a good enough level of income. Such a points-based system, again, is not guaranteed in this term, but there may be possibilities that the US may move somewhere towards that. And another example of this is when the Trump administration proposed to change the H-1B from a lottery-based system to a merit-based system. Just like in many other countries they're following right now, they want the highest, most talented people, of course, in the country, and that's why a lottery-based system seems like an idea of the past. They want to change that.
I'm using it to get something done, but we'll be signing a very powerful immigration act. It'll be great. It'll be merit-based. The country's tried to get it for 25 or 30 years. It'll be strong on the border, but you'll come in legally, and you'll be able to come in legally.
Think of it this way. This is in continuation with my last point, where the government wants to intervene and decide who gets to stay in the country and who doesn't. It is no longer a matter of the employer saying, hey, I want this person to stay in the country because they fulfill my need. The government here will come in and decide, okay, this person has enough merit and they can stay. So it is not up to the employer anymore, it is up to the government. And of course, even in a lottery-based system, the employer does not have final choice on who stays and who doesn't, but in this case, of course, the government does have it. Please note, however, I do think that this change is going to be helpful for all of you guys who are working so hard. There is a final change that I do have in mind, and that is that visa appointments may further see limitations all over again, just like back in 2020 or 2021 initially, because all these things, since the Biden administration came in, these things took a little bit of time to change. But please note that changes are coming. I feel it. I know for a fact that there's going to be a change in this case, and there may be some limitations imposed on our way in terms of immigration, but these changes are things that we as a community will already be prepared for in advance. If you like this video and my research, make sure to share this with people who need to know, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. There's also our Instagram page where you will get a lot of content about studying, working, and living overseas. I hope to see you there as well. Thank you so much for watching this. Goodbye and take care until next time.